So let's talk about a remote sales job, what it is, and how it actually works. In this video, we're going to cover two of the most popular roles in this industry. We're going to cover the process, we're going to cover what the day-to-day looks like, and we're going to cover the payment structure. How do you actually get paid in a remote sales job? First and foremost, we'll start off by saying a remote sales job is part of a structured team. You're selling a product for a company that comes with team meetings, that comes with having sales management over you, a management team, that comes with typical structure that you'd see in a typical company. Only this is done remotely. You're not selling in person in a traditional fashion. You're not doing door to door. You're not inside of, a kiosk. You're not doing events at shows. Typically, this is usually at home, at your computer, at your desk, talking to people over Google Meet, Zoom, over the phone, email, social media, etc. And to jump right into what the process looks like, it typically goes like this. You have companies that are generating leads for their product or service. Leads can be from advertising, like you see Facebook ads, Google ads, any type of advertising on different types of platforms. Leads can come from referrals. Leads can come from cold outreach, whether you have sales reps doing cold calls, reaching out cold on social media, those kinds of things. Once the leads are generated, then you need to have some kind of contact. This is typically where the different remote sales roles start to come in, and the role you perform in depends on whether you are being an appointment setter, whether you're being a closer, or you're doing some kind of hybrid role. The point of contact is usually done by phone, email, social media. By phone, meaning the lead that came from the ad, or the lead that came from the referral, or the lead that came from that person's social media content, YouTube, Instagram Reels, that kind of thing. That lead typically provides their phone number, typically provides their email, and an appointment setter's job would be to pick up the phone, call that lead, have a conversation, qualify them, see if they're a good fit to work with that company or, use that company's service. And then they would pass them along down the line meaning the call would get booked into the calendar of what's called a closer. Calendars, using things like Calendly, HubSpot calendars. There's a whole bunch of different calendar software where calls are being booked directly into a calendar, being stored as a lead in a CRM, in somewhere where they're tracking applications. And those conversations are being booked in usually for 45 minutes to an hour for another sales professional called a closer to jump on the phone, jump on, a FaceTime kind of thing like Zoom, Google Meet, have a conversation, do what's called a discovery call, qualify even further, have a deep conversation on what makes the most sense for this prospect, and then pitch them the solution if the solution is what's going to actually help them move along and get the results that that prospect is looking to get. And then typically after that, that person, whether they close or don't close, meaning whether they actually bought the service or not, they will then go into what's called a CRM. They'll go into the customer relationship manager is what it's called, where that closer will manage that relationship before the close. Again, if that person doesn't close, that's where the closer will be responsible for doing things like follow-up, nurturing them. If they do close, typically the closer might work on getting referrals from that person after they've gotten good results from whatever it is that they're buying. For example, let's say you run a social media marketing agency and your company's job is to help companies run ads. Maybe you do cold email outreach. You get emails of business owners, the top of the kind of process to generate leads. Maybe you go and you find leads of different businesses. You find different emails from different businesses. You have some kind of automated email sequence that sends them emails and says, hey, we've got this advertising service that we think we could utilize to help your business grow. Businesses respond to that, say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's see what makes sense. Maybe they'll book in a call directly. Maybe they'll submit an inquiry on the website. If they submit an inquiry on the website and maybe you have an appointment setter, pick up the phone and call that person, saying, hey, I saw that you responded or you submitted your phone number on our website, saw that you were interested in getting help with your advertising. Let's talk about it. That appointment setter would have a 10 to 15 minute conversation saying, asking questions, getting to know the business, getting to know the business owner, getting to know what their goals are, what their struggles are, what their current marketing. Once that appointment setter identifies that they're a good fit, they would then say, hey, you know what? I think it makes sense for us to continue this conversation. Let me go ahead and book you in with an advisor on our team. They would then book that person in with, like I said before, the closer, who would have the call scheduled on their calendar. Their job would be to, call that person, confirm, make sure they're good to go for the appointment time, make sure that everything's good to go. Then they would show up to that call, have that 45-minute to hour-long conversation to further qualify, to further ask questions, to further make sure and say, hey, this is what we've got to offer. What is it you're looking for? Have that back and forth and say, you know what? I think it makes sense for us to work together. They would pitch, this is what we offer, this is the price point. Then the business owner would then be able to say, okay, you know what? This makes sense. Let me go ahead and buy this service. And then they would now start working with that company that you are working for as a sales professional. So that's typically how the process goes up to the point of close. Again, if they don't close, it is then the closer's responsibility to, obviously, depending on the reason why they didn't close, whether the person is delaying the process, saying, you know what, I'd like to get started in a month, 2 months, or whether the person is giving different objections like, I need to think about it, I need to take some time, I need to bring this to another team member. Whatever it is, it's on the closer to then have follow-up conversations, to nurture that relationship, and to then eventually bring them to the point of close and or be done with that account. The point is to get a final yes or no decision made. That is the closer's role. In another video, we'll talk about what comes after in like CSM roles and stuff like that. But just for the sake of this video, that's typically the process. Lead comes in, appointment setter contacts the lead, qualifies, passes them on to a closer. Closer has the conversation, makes the sale, then it gets passed on to the delivery team that's actually going to help with the delivery of the product and service that the person just bought. Sometimes, depending on the process, because every company has slightly different processes, sometimes they don't use appointment setters. Sometimes the lead can come in and directly book on the calendar, and then you just have a closer come into that process and then close and pass them on. Sometimes you have one person that operates, like I said, a hybrid role that operates in both of those roles, where they're both doing the outreach to qualify the person and then either selling right then and there live, or they're then booking them into a second conversation with themselves to then further qualify and decide if this person is going to move forward in the process and actually buy the service. Typically in a hybrid role, you're getting paid more commissions than you would get paid just for doing one part of the process. Now, the day-to-day, it's very simple, very straightforward. You have communication with the team. You have your CRM and your pipeline management. You've got your live calls, your actual active sales work, and then you've got your reports and end of day stuff. So usually, again, this looks slightly different depending on what role you're in, but you wake up, you check all of your communication channels. Most businesses are using Slack. It's pretty much just a group chat app for businesses where you're communicating with your team members. Usually you're checking all your messages, clearing that inbox. Then you're checking your CRM. That's going to be your software, your pipeline, where all of your deals are managed, your calls, the updates, the notes that you have on different prospects, the people that you're planning to follow up with, the people that you're nurturing, those kinds of things. You're going through that, you're tracking, making sure your numbers all make sense, looking at your close rates, your show rates. Again, in further videos, we'll talk more about these things. But you're just reviewing your CRM, making sure that you have the plan for the day. If you're an appointment setter, which means you're outbound dialing, maybe you're building a list of who you're going to call that day. If you're a closer, maybe you're just reviewing who you want to follow up with that day, who you want to push further along in the pipeline that day, and who's on your calendar for that day. Typically, again, every company is a little bit different, but now you would have a team meeting. Now, this team meeting is mostly for coaching, skill development, holding people accountable to the tracking, to the numbers that the team is going for as a whole. a lot of times you have the conversations that you're having over the phone or by Zoom, by Google Meet, you're having these conversations recorded. So typically you have a sales manager or the business owner, depending on the size of company, you're reviewing these calls live, you're reviewing these conversations, they're giving you feedback, they're seeing what went well, what could have done better, and just making sure that you are doing well at your job, providing training, providing coaching, and making sure that you're consistently improving. Then you would usually jump into your work for the day, your main work block. Again, if you're an appointment setter, this is going to consist of you dialing the numbers that you've planned to dial for the day. You should already have your list ready if you're being efficient with this. If you're a closer, this is typically now you jumping into your scheduled meetings. If you don't have meetings right away, obviously you're spending time nurturing your lead list, doing follow-ups, sometimes even setting your own deals to just help keep the pipeline full, keep your calendar full. But you're pretty much showing up to your booked in appointments that are on your calendar for the day. Once those conversations are done, again, whatever time you have outside of actually either dialing or showing up to meetings, you're doing the pipeline management, follow-ups, nurturing, all of that good stuff. And then you're at the end of the day logging that activity, end of day reports. Usually you're sending the information to the business owner in a group chat, or you're filling out some kind of tracking sheet or doing some kind of submission form that pretty much, again, if you're an appointment setter, goes over how many dials you made that day, how many conversations you had that day, how many people you actually set, how many people that you set previously or the same day that are on the calendar for today, how many of those people showed up to the conversations, how many of those people closed, and you're just tracking and logging all of the activity you had for that day. Same thing as a closer. How many meetings did you show up to or had that day? How many people showed up to your meetings? How many people did you make an offer to that were a good fit? What was the qualified conversation rate? And how many of those people closed? What type of closes were they? Did people leave deposits? Did people pay in full? Did people do split pay payment plans? Those kinds of things. Again, just logging activity, what actually happened that day. And you're submitting this information as an end of day report so that the sales manager or business owner can keep track of what's going on and know exactly where it is you might need support to do better at your role and earn more commissions and obviously help grow the company. But that's pretty much the overarching day-to-day. And then when it comes to payment structure, there's a few different types depending on the company and how they do things. What's most common for a lot of these roles is commission only. So maybe you would get as a closer anywhere from 10, 15%. Sometimes I've seen even 20% commission per sale. Sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on the price point and how that company operates. As an appointment setter, the person setting the calls, typically you might see around 5%, 3% commission per sale. I've even seen some appointment setters get paid per qualified show up call. So when you book a call in for a closer, if they show up to that call and they're a qualified lead, then sometimes you get paid 50, 70, $100, whatever it is per call that shows up, showcasing you did your part of the sales process, you did your job. And a lot of times businesses will also do a base pay plus commission. You'll see this more often in the setter role, especially. So you might see someone pay $2,000, $3,000, $1,500 per month plus commission. That commission could be either the pay per appointment show as appointment setter. That commission could be the deals that you set for the closer that ended up closing, like a 5% or 3% on that. Same thing as a closer. You might get a base plus commission, $2,000, $3,000, $1,500, even $5,000 a month. It depends on the company, where you'll get that base pay plus commission, 10%, 5%, 6%, whatever it is, percentage on what you closed. Now, in remote sales as a whole, you have kind of the appointment setter closer role. That is more for what people like to call like high ticket sales, which is coaching businesses, consulting businesses, advertising agencies, those types of service-based companies. Then you have the more corporate side of remote sales, which is where the appointment setter role is almost synonymous with the SDR role, where you are mostly working for companies that are software companies, companies with funding, Y Combinator, those kind of things. A lot of it is in the software space, like working for Zoom, working for Microsoft, working for, Google Meet, like Google, all of these things. That's more the corporate side. When companies get to a certain size, they end up kind of using the language of SDR again, which is very similar, not exactly the same, but very similar to the appointment setting role. And then you also have the AE, or account executive, which is very similar to the closer role. Again, I could go through all of the different kind of functions, but realistically, the way that role specifically functions does come down to how that company's sales process looks. So even me telling you this is exactly what they do, it varies slightly between different companies. Some companies have SDRs doing purely cold outbound. Some of them are doing cold and warm leads inbound. Sometimes companies have account executives only dealing with booked calls from the SDR team. Sometimes the account executives are doing both cold outreach and dealing with inbound. Sometimes they call them account executive, but they're doing more of a hybrid role. Again, this is typically what these two roles do, but you also have nuances between companies. Typically with the corporate roles in the SDR versus account executive era of things, the corporate side of things, you do see higher base pay, but that usually comes with more cold outreach, more pipeline management, more self-generated leads. Whereas on the other side of things with the, I guess, high ticket, I mean, they're all high ticket typically, but people, I guess, for whatever reason, call the, more advertising coaching services 5, 10K, 20K deal sizes, being high ticket sales, that industry being a little bit more inbound leads, a little bit more warmed leads, a little bit faster sales cycles. Usually you're going to see less base pay here, and more commission only. There are pros and cons to both, which I won't get into here. But that is kind of the payment structure for jobs in this industry. Now, just a couple myths that I hear sometimes, not often, but sometimes people are getting into this industry thinking that it's passive income. It's not passive income. It's income that you are working for. It is a job. The only, I guess, passive-ish income is if you have some kind of commission structure where you're more of a closer / account manager, where when you close deals, you might be closing a recurring payment deal. Maybe this is for a marketing agency that does retainer-based pay. Maybe this is a lead gen type of company that does, lead packages where you can keep selling more leads and more leads and more leads to the same companies. So even that, it's still not passive because there is maintenance of the relationship that goes on. It's not like a one and done thing. But again, I do hear this notion of passive income sometimes. That's just not what this industry is. It is a sales job done remotely. Lots of pros and cons of travel, time control, and schedule maintenance, and these kinds of things. Obviously dodging commutes and being able to work from a lot of different locations, almost anywhere, being some pros. But again, it's not this get rich quick passive income thing that maybe some might be advertising it as. So don't fall for that. It's also not this work 1 to 2 hours per day, make 10, 20, 30, 40K a month thing. Again, if people are advertising it as that, it's not that. Are there some people working very minimal hours, making 10, 20, 30, 40K plus a month? Yes, there are. But there's obviously caveats to that. The people that got there are usually there because of the network and the referral basis and the system that they've built for themselves. For example, one thing I would do a lot when I was selling a lot was work a lot on referral basis, work a lot on long-term nurturing cycles, meaning if I had a prospect who it wasn't the right time for them, there are some sales reps who are one and done in their conversations where they say, hey, if you're not buying now, I'm moving on to the next lead. Whereas my philosophy was more along the lines of no matter what happens in this conversation, I want to leave you better off than how you came. And if we are going to do this, whether you can afford it now or later, we're going to come up with some plan for how you can. So a lot of times I did have people that I would make a 6-month budget saving or 8-month plan for a 3-month plan for, where they would come back 5 months later, come back 6 months later, come back 3 months later. And then it wasn't really a conversation. It was just like hey, I'm ready to go, send me the checkout link. And that would result in some months where I would make 5, 10, 15, 20K a month by just texting out a couple checkout links to the pipeline that I've nurtured and relationships that I built or referrals that I got. But again, there are a lot of reps, again, that in the long term, you build up a big enough brand. Some people, sales reps, are very focused on brand building and nurturing through content. Maybe if you build up a big network in that sense, you can get your work hours smaller, 3-4 hours a day here and there, and make sure that you're closing deals and still making a good income. But again, that's not what the industry is at face value. It's not a thing where it's like you come in, you take 1-2 calls a day, and then you just, you make whatever you make and go from there. That's just not what the industry is as a whole. So anyone that is getting into it for that reason, that's definitely, again, not saying you can't work your way up to those smaller hours, but that's not what it is inherently. And I want to say that it's not easy. It's not a whenever, wherever. At the end of the day, results come from structure. They come from consistency. They come from nurturing and pipeline building. They come from focusing on building high level skills, working on communication, working on your ability to build trust. It comes from the long-term work and consistency in your role. It's not this jump in, quickly get to XYZ amount of income and right off into the sunset, work whenever, sleep whenever, who cares, whatever. You are part of a company, you're part of a team, you're part of a structure, just like any other job pretty much. There are perks, again, pros, cons, those kinds of things, but it's not how it might come to seem sometimes. Who this is for is people that are coachable, people that are comfortable with rejection, people that are willing to just consistently improve their communication skills, improve their sales skills. At the end of the day, you want to treat this industry, this job, as more of an athlete would treat their sport. You're consistently getting better. It's not about seniority. The people that get paid the most are the best players. So you're consistently training, getting coaching to become the best player you can possibly be. And as soon as you're not a good player anymore, then you lose your income. Again, that's why I like to liken it to sports a lot. Being comfortable with rejection, because at the end of the day, people will say 30%, some people will say 40%, some people will say 50, 60% is a good close rate. But if you're closing at 30%, that means 70% of the time you're facing rejection. If you're closing at 50%, that means half the time you're facing rejection. So again, being comfortable with rejection. And if you're looking for structure and routine, this is also something that's good for you, because again, it's not this willy-nilly show up whenever you feel like it type of role, type of industry. Consistently doing your dials as an appointment setter, consistently nurturing your pipeline, doing follow-up, consistently treating every discovery call almost the same, having consistent types of conversations, consistently tracking your metrics. All of these things take structure. So if you're looking for structure, this is a great industry. And through that structure, you will find the freedom, lifestyle, and control that you're looking to have. But again, I keep saying it, but I want to make sure it's clear. It's not this willy-nilly jump in, get rich quick. It is a sport, and the best at the game survive. And it takes real skill to perform, and it takes time to build that skill. So I just wanted to make this video to go over some intro stuff on what the remote sales job is and what it looks like. Hopefully this helps. We're going to be making a lot more videos like this in the future. If you did enjoy, if you learned something, make sure to subscribe, like this video. If you're looking for your first or your next remote sales job, RepSelect is a software platform. It's a job marketplace to help remote sales reps connect with high quality businesses. Business owners go on there, they look for reps to invite to their job opportunities, make an account, fill out your profile. If your profile looks good, you can get invited from different business owners. If you're not going to wait for invites, you can also apply directly to a ton of job roles we have on the platform. We're posting new ones every single day. Link is down in the description. I'll see you guys in the next video.